The 500 Section Lounge is a founding member of the OddPods Media Network. Hi, I'm Sam.
I'm Richie.
And I'm Little Matt.
And here at the 500 Section Lounge, we have a few requirements.
First, you've got to be able to talk about anything at all.
Secondly, you need to be able to laugh, play games, and talk to some very interesting people.
From sports radio personalities to reality television contest finalists and everything in between, we talk to them all.
Yeah, it's all right here in the lounge.
So be on the lookout for what we do next.
And always be there to
grab a listen. Joining us tonight in the 500 Section Lounge, Richie, week 3 of the Sports Febstival.
I like it.
Former NBA and FIBA coach, won multiple championships. He is now the host of the Scott Fields show, which appears on Roku and Amazon Fire. It's Coach Scott Fields. Scott, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Come on, Sam. I've been looking forward to this. I get to hang out with my Hoosier brethren right here.
Yes,
let's do this, man. Let's go.
You're from Indiana, and
I am.
And you now are in Utah, and we just, I kind of found you by chance, and I think it's been divine intervention, kind of, in the aspect of you have done a ton of stuff, and it all started in Indiana. Where are you from in Indiana, and kind of just talk a little bit how you started getting to where you are?
You bet, Sam. I appreciate the question, and thanks for having me, guys. I mean, this is going to be a lot of fun to sit here and hang out with you fellas who are my Hoosier brethren, because they always say you can take a boy out of Indiana, but you can't take Indiana out of the boy. So this is home for me, man. I played my high school basketball and, of course, football and track at Lewis Cass High School, which is in the small town of Walton, Indiana.
Yeah.
Not too far from good old Kokomo, Indiana.
Yep.
So, I was a Hall of Famer. We had 10 varsity letters. I was the starting quarterback of the team there all 4 years in high school. Of course, basketball was my passion just because it's the Hoosiers, baby.
Yeah.
And of course, now I'm going to date myself, and as you can tell, I'm follically challenged. I played back when there was no classification, which I thoroughly just loved.
I tell you, real quick, my senior year was when class started, and it just hasn't been the same since.
It was just a different feel. I mean, it's just society and participation trophies, but that's a whole other thing we can get into. But, then I also set some records in track, and then got right into coaching. I did 14 years of college coaching. Those teams were nationally ranked, and we had the College Coach Player of the Year. And then at a very young age, I got into professional coaching and have coached around the globe, and have been a part of so many different cultures, spoke so many different languages. I don't even know, my tongue's so confused, I don't even know if I'm even talking right now. So, but then we got to dabble into the NBA, and, Hall of Fame coach, Jerry Sloane, may he rest in peace. I was consulted with him for 2 seasons with the Jazz. And then another Indiana legend, great friend of mine, probably my best friend in the industry, Keith Smart, who won the championship against Syracuse. He was the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, and I did 3 summers with him when Steph Curry was just a rookie, and then I also did a summer with the Sacramento Kings. So I've had so much fun. I've been so blessed. I got the perfect face for radio, so here's the truth, fellas.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Let me tell you something. I'll post a picture on Instagram, and I may get, maybe 120 likes. But then when I post a photo with me and my wife, all of a sudden it gets 400 likes. So that it's not for me. They're not liking my mug.
Right. So did you grow up a Hoosier fan then, IU?
I did. Of course I did. My dad, every Saturday morning, we're watching the Bob Knight show with Chuck I think it was Chuck Marlowe was hosting that show. Saturday morning, early mornings, I'm sitting there watching Bobby Knight. And then Lewis Cass High School also had Ted Kitchell, who played for Bobby Knight. So, of course, just a phenomenal player. And then his cousin John played for Gene Cady with Purdue. So, I feel like I've been blessed to have grown up in an atmosphere and an environment that was conducive for basketball. And just like everybody else. I mean, we're shoveling the driveway this time of year to get the snow, to go out and shoot, and playing in the barns and playing on the side of barns, playing on the side of garages. Man, if they had a hoop, we were balling. So that's the atmosphere I grew up in, fellas, and you guys know it. You're in the land of Hoosiers.
I grew up, and can you hear me okay?
I can, yes, sir.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. I heard something happen, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't. Anyways, I grew up in the middle of the 80s. Like I was born in 79. So I lived through that 80s back half of it, of that IU Purdue rivalry.
Ooh,
and my mom went to Purdue, so I'm a Purdue fan.
Okay.
And so I can appreciate the rivalry, and it just remembering that. And the thing is I mentioned it to you a little bit in the messenger earlier last night. My grandfather coached basketball in the state of Indiana for 28 years or something around there.
Awesome. Think of the number of lives he impacted. That's just phenomenal. Yes.
And he coached David Anspaugh, who is the director of the movie Hoosiers. Yeah. And I love that movie for that reason, because it gives me that memory with my grandfather. But my point is, my grandfather was an IU fan. So like whenever IU and Purdue played and we were at Grandma and Grandpa's, it was a tense afternoon.
Well, you know what? That was so fun, because basketball, in the state of Indiana, it feels like it's a religion. It's in our DNA, and you're kind of thrust in it. And the fact that you got to grow up around that and, feel that. I think that's something that's kind of missing in sports. But, Bobby Knight versus Gene Cady were phenomenal rivalries. And you think of, a lot of people, whether they agreed or disagreed with Bobby Knight, his boorish kind of attitude or behavior. And sometimes he would cross that line, which consequently got him out of Indiana, where he went to Texas Tech. But look about a year ago when, Bobby Knight went back to Assembly Hall.
I was going to ask you what your thoughts were, because he went 20 years.
I loved it. And again, my good buddy Keith Smart, I've had conversations with him, and I know a lot of the Indiana guys, and to hear what that meant to them, Isaiah Thomas and Mike Woodson and Kent Benson and, just the names and people. I mean, Randy Whitman was there, and then AJ Guyton was there, and Lindemann. So, I mean, the list goes on and on, but just what it meant to them and to see the fans. I mean, I remember Mark Cuban and Sage Steele from ESPN being there in the crowd, and they've got their phones out, and seeing Coach Knight walk out there and he get feisty with Dick Vitale. I just think it was something that was nice to see, because that was Indiana basketball, and Indiana basketball misses a legend and an icon like that.
Well, and I'm going to ask this question, and I'll let you guys get to it. Sorry. Do you think his exit at IU the first time was him just being kind of a product or a casualty of the times of the way they changed? Because he was a successful basketball coach by all means.
He got the most out of his talent, you bet.
But yet at this point, he was fired from IU because he didn't change his style of coaching. He wanted to maintain, but that was the way basketball was moving. So was he a casualty to it?
Well, I mean, obviously, they put out that, zero tolerance policy, and Miles Brand, made that decision. And of course, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And, when you've got a guy that has had the success that he's had, I'm sure he didn't like someone breathing, putting him under a microscope saying, hey, this is the way you got to do it. And he's thinking, okay, well, this is what I've done. This is what I've always done. And this is how we've had success. So, it's just sad that, it's almost like a marriage dissolved there. Yeah. And, you've seen multiple coaches, go through Indiana, and they're still trying to get that tradition and, to get that level of respect around the nation once again. And again, it's a work in progress. And, we've seen a lot of coaches go through there that have just struggled, and it's a shame to see the way that it went down. But, Bobby Knight is always going to be legendary.
Okay, I lied. I've got one more thing.
Oh, hit me, Sam. Hit me, Sam. Bring it, baby. Let's go.
Richie is my guy. Like, I brought him on, Scott, because I can talk about a topic for a really long time. So like when he's in lounge, he'll do this to me. He'll do the circle.
Yeah.
Come on, wrap it up. And I brought him on for that reason. But I love this topic. I really do.
I love it. Hey,
I just don't want I don't want the hurry up.
So, hey, Richie, Sam's telling you to pump the brakes a little bit, man.
Just a little.
I haven't done a thing yet.
No, he hasn't. He's been good.
He just
If
saw
you see Sam jump, it's because he kicked him under the table.
That's right. But I
love it, Matt.
I believe it was before the season started, his first season at Texas Tech. He had just been let go from IU. He came to Ball State and gave a talk. I mean, it was IU. I was a kid where that development of my dislike for him was because he was the coach at IU.
Right.
So
and your mom being at Purdue, a Boilermaker.
Right. So as I listened to him, I grew to where I really, really liked his thoughts. Not that he was 100%, we were compatible on, but just that got to know him as just Bob Knight or Bobby Knight, not the coach at IU. He's not there anymore. So it was a lot easier to accept it. I really like Coach Knight.
You know what? He is a walking encyclopedia, or for the new age, a walking Google of knowledge for basketball. And he's forgotten more basketball than most people in this generation will ever know.
Right.
So to hear him, share knowledge and wisdom and nuggets, that's where you can gain a new level of respect and see it through a different lens, because he has a wealth of knowledge. And it's a shame that most people will judge him because of the attitude or behaviors that they saw. And again, I know that's part of the total package, which makes him interesting. I mean, it's just like somebody talking about being a fan of Mike Tyson. He was such an amazing boxer in that same generation in the 90s, but yet, his out of the ring kind of stuff, that legacy and will kind of tarnish it. And it's the same kind of topics that you could go into with, should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame? Because look what he did on the field, but off the field with the betting, it's all encompassing. But if you just look at the total picture and total package, it's a man you have to respect. And, even though I didn't always agree with his mannerisms and behaviors, but yet, how can you argue with the success that he had? My thing was, I was more of a positive reinforcement guy. I believe people know when they make mistakes, and I'm going to correct, and I'm going to coach, and I'm going to hold you accountable. But just my personality wasn't that style. But hey, you know what? Who am I to judge? Because the man had success.
Well, you can see how deep that relationship. Yes, I added one more thing, Matt. How deep that how deep that relationship had been severed was they had a celebration of the undefeated 1976 national champion team. And Bob Knight was in West Lafayette with Gene Cady at a fundraiser.
Right. Yep.
And he did not go to Bloomington.
Yep. And that's when, he still just felt like, Bloomington did him wrong, even though it was just a few individuals that did him wrong. And yet the community was thirsty to have him come back, in the way that they embraced him and showed him love. I mean, if you're a fan of basketball and Indiana basketball, even if you're a Ball State Cardinal or a Notre Dame Fighting Irish or a Purdue Boilermaker or an Evansville Purple Ace, you had to get emotional to see what it meant because of the lives that he impacted, and to see the emotion from the players and the fans, I think was a magical time. And it's a neat thing to sit back and observe and watch.
Well, and to see a guy who threw a chair across the court during a game
against Purdue, right?
Against Purdue.
Yeah.
Cry.
He did not like that call, and he got his point across that he didn't like the call. But yet, when you look at it from my perspective and my lens, because I'm such great friends with so many guys that played for IU and now are coaching in the NBA and are at the professional level, look what Bobby Knight did for individuals who went through his program. I mean, there's a large list of NBA executives, NBA coaches, NBA players that have gone through his program that started off as managers. Look at Lawrence Frank and what he's doing with the Clippers right now, who went through, IU. And then you look at my friend Keith Smart, but yet look also what he did for Landon Turner, who was in a car accident and was paralyzed, and the things that he's done continue to do for that young man.
Right.
So, it's those relationships, and he's a teacher. He's a teacher of the game, and if you went through his program and you were tough enough to endure those things, man, he would go above and beyond to, set you up for your post basketball playing career to make sure that you can provide for your family. And that's the things that a lot of people don't talk about. So Sam, thanks for letting me kind of share the things that I've observed and
absolutely
witnessed firsthand.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. It's one of those that, to see him cry, that meant, that he was finally relieved that he could be back at a place that he had done so much. Knowing that you were an IU fan, I thought that would be a good topic. So thanks, gentlemen, for letting me go that long.
Now, what do you see in difference between like American coaching versus like the Euro style? And I mean, it seems like you get a lot more well-rounded players, at least in the NBA, coming out of Europe. Is that due to how they're coached up along the way, or is that just kind of the style they play?
Matt, great question, my friend, because I've been in both. I've been in Europe and had success, and I've been in Europe to where I would come in mid-season and replace a Yugoslavian coach who was very militant and very military, or old Bobby Knight style, where they're out there running in the snow in the mountains like a Rocky III, and it's not even anything to do with basketball. And all of a sudden, then I come in there with this high energy, and we're talking basketball, and we're doing basketball drills, and we're working on basketball fundamentals to get them back, to get rid of the bad habits that they've picked up. And to me, I like what they do in Europe because they have a club system. Look at some of the best players that are now playing over here in the NBA that were playing at a young level because the grassroots teaching of the game and fundamentals are better taught than what we have here with our AAU system. And Matt, I'm glad you asked that, because when you look at a kid that's let's just throw out any club. Let's say Barcelona in Spain, or a Chesca in Russia. Why are they so good? Because they go through a club system where they start off as minis, then they go to cadets, then they go to scholars, then they go to juniors, then they're at the elite level, and they're getting fundamentals taught at all steps from the beginning at the grassroots level, where the game should be fun, and you teach them to have fun, to perfect those fundamentals and get their muscle memory and get their mechanics down, and teach them the proper ball handling and passing and things that are so missed, because here NBA and American players are so athletic and they're so strong that they just play above the rim and all that da-da-da, on Sports Center, that all of a sudden all they want to do is be da-da-da, da-da-da, but yet they can't pass, they can't dribble, they don't have good mechanics. And again, we're setting them up to fail because of the process that is out there, and everybody goes to YouTube and they want to emulate and do what they see on YouTube, but yet they don't have the skill set to do that. So slow the game down, go back to teaching and give them the proper mechanics. So Matt, great question, and hopefully I was able to answer it very thoroughly, but what they do in Europe is fantastic from the grassroots level up, and that's why you see a Manu Ginobli, that's why you see a Tony Parker, Kobe Bryant, 9 years old in Italy with his dad Joe Bean, who kind of came up through that, and then being around. I've got stuff over here signed by Tex Winter, who was a phenomenal coach, who was with Phil Jackson, with Chicago, and with the Lakers. But yet what I loved when I was in those practices with those guys, they didn't even play up and down. They just played 3-on-3 basketball and made them get the mechanics and get the cuts and do all the things down. And where Kobe Bryant was so good, he never got bored of the mundane. I mean, I can tell you a story right out here at Zion Bank Center, where the Utah Jazz practice and where a lot of the players practice before the games. Kobe Bryant would sit there for 3 hours working on squaring up in the triple threat with a swing through, rip through, and attacking the outside shoulder of the defense who's going to pick him up on the pick and roll. And that's all he worked on, to make sure his shoulders were square, his feet were square, the rip through and the dribble to attack the outside shoulder to engage the big man. So he knew how to give the read so he could set Pau Gasol up to be better. For 3 hours he did that to make it perfect. Now, when you look at that kind of attention to detail, that's how the great become the great, right there.
And plus, you give him the athletic ability to be on sports.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, Matt.
That kind of, we went way away from where my first two things came up. but I was going to bring up, it sounds like that aspect of what Kobe Bryant did for 3 hours, just in the ready triple threat position, sounds kind of like the, what is it? The Malcolm Gladwell rule of 10,000 hours. You're perfect.
Mhm.
Like you're it. He's putting that time in to the mundane, like you just said, so he could be the guy.
Right. It's the same as Steph Curry, fellas. Being around Steph Curry as a rookie, when all of a sudden there's a lot of cynicism with him being, in the number 7 spot. He's not a good enough ball handler. He's too small to guard, the 2 position. He's not big enough. But yet he blocked out the white noise and he focused on what he does. And now, which has become infamous, is his pregame routine, which he's kind of getting himself set. But yet people forget the hours and hours and thousands of repetition for that muscle memory to get that quick release off, to where you see him in those pregame warmups working on all these different angles, right hand, left hand, and from different shot angles. Exactly, but that's just him having fun. That's almost like that's a reward to himself.
But here's the thing: every time he puts one up from the tunnel, you think he's got a shot.
Well, listen, he's a guy who he's transformed the game, just as a la Michael Jordan did when the game went global, where all of a sudden, where it was Magic and Bird, Indiana Boy, and Jordan, and that dream team kind of globalized the game of basketball to where it inspired a Pau Gasol, a Marc Gasol, a Manu Ginobili, where these guys, if you watched back when that dream team was going on, these guys just wanted to have their pictures taken and get autographs from these guys. Now, all of a sudden, we quit teaching the fundamentals, and the rest of the world has caught up with us. Where I'm a patriot. I'm American. It saddens me to see the world catch up with us, but you have to be creative thinking and say, okay, why are they catching up with us? It's because we're not teaching at the grassroots level anymore.
Yep.
Well, somebody I saw that you had worked with, that I kind of was disappointed that we got, for lack of a better term, the back nine of his career was Arveda Sabonis.
Oh man, that guy was something special. And look what his son is doing right there in your backyard there with the Pacers. Phenomenal. Kid works hard, went out to Gonzaga, but Sabonis didn't get into the league until after 30. But yet here's a guy, and I was great friends, and he was actually my agent in Europe, Lucky Capicchione with Inter Performances. Go look at the list of guys that he brought over to the league. We're talking Peja Stojakovic, Arveda Sabonis. That list goes on. And I remember seeing Manu Ginobili before he ever came over to the USA. And the first thing the agent asked me was, hey, what do you think of Manu? And I'm like, man, you talk about an explosive first step and a guy who can finish at 6'5". I was like, that first step is something. And then all of a sudden, several years later, you see Greg Popovich setting up a system where, he took the players that he had, and he's always taken international players and had success with them, with Tim Duncan. And you look at Robinson, and then you look at, Manu and Parker, and man, I just love seeing what they've done, because I got to see them before they actually came here. So it was almost like in the music genre, you saw the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC over in Europe getting their feet wet, getting their reps before it was ever introduced to America. It was the same thing with Manu Ginobili, and I got to see it firsthand. So I know I'm aging myself right here, but man, I'm passionate. I'm passionate about what I see. And when I told that agent, man, look at the career that guy had with Argentina, making Argentina a competitive team. But yet, look what he did with those Spurs for years. They were fun to watch.
Yeah, they were.
Was that because San Antonio was just putting more money into international scouting and kind of taking those flyers with the second-round picks, or was that?
It had nothing to do with money, but you know what? They were open-minded to not trying to change their game. You guys right there, Pacers. Larry Brown. What did Larry Brown do so good? He went everywhere he'd go. But you know what he did? He allowed Rick Smits to face the basket and shoot the mid-range jumper, where every other coach that went into Indiana, what they tried to do? They tried to put Rick
post him up.
They tried to make him a back-to-the-back player. That's not what he does. Let players do what they do well. Larry Brown says, I'm going to let Rick Smits face up, where we're going to, spread the floor a little bit, which is going to give more room for the other players, for Reggie and Mark Jackson and, Dale Davis and that whole crew.
I tell you what.
Something that simple, fellas, is what made that team so good, just to let Rick Smits face up and shoot.
Well, I just got to ask, since you were there pretty much at the beginning of, the NBA, and you were there, what was the most memorable moment from that time? And then, obviously, you were there for 2 years. What was the most memorable moment from that time? And then, obviously, you were there pretty much at the beginning of, the NBA, and you were there for 2 years. What was the most memorable moment from that time? And then, obviously, you were there pretty much at the beginning of, that more switch to the more Mike D'Antoni style offense with not with D'Antoni, but with Curry's rookie year, him there with Monta Ellis and everybody saying it's not going to work. How is that switch going? And do you ever see it going back to the big man, more centric NBA, or is it pretty much here to stay with the 3-and-D type players?
I think it's another great question, Matt, and I appreciate you asking.
He's fire.
I think,
Yep.
yeah, he's bringing the heat. You're juicy, brother. I like it.
He's got the juice.
It all depends on what players you have, what personnel you have. Now, is there going to be another Shaq in the near future? We don't know that. Now, is there anybody on the radar where there's a guy with some size who can play with his back to the basket, be a rim runner, be a rim protector, but yet have the physical presence to dominate the paint like that? The way the game is going right now, it has transitioned to space and pace because of the success that the Golden State Warriors have had recently. And it's such a copycat league. If it works for one, they all try to emulate it. But again, you can't put a square peg into a round hole, and you have to take the talent that you have. So until we have dominant players who don't have the versatility, but when you look at the big men now, Matt, you look at Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's a guy who can, rebound, put the ball on the floor, and lead the fast break. And yet, his mid-range game is getting better. He's not super proficient at the three yet, but as soon as he does, oh my goodness, you're looking at the next KD. Because look what KD does at 6'11". Kevin Durant, to me, is the best player right there with LeBron James in the league with a Giannis Antetokounmpo. And, it's all about, who's going to pass the torch. Just like the NFL game today, the Super Bowl, you got Tom Brady, TB12, who's won 6 of them. But yet you got Patrick Mahomes, who's the young gun coming up, who's now about to be the face of the league. It's the same thing from, Michael to Kobe to LeBron. Who's LeBron going to pass that torch to, and who's it going to be? Is it going to be a James Wiseman who's out there who can run the floor and do those kinds of things? But yet James Wiseman can also step out and shoot the three. And you're more marketable right now when you have that versatile portfolio, because now you have more assets that you bring to a franchise. So to me, I kind of continue with the way the rules have changed from the 70s to the 80s, 80s to 90s, and today. The hand checking rule has changed a lot, where it's more of an up-tempo game where a lot of numbers are being put up, where, we're getting 130s and 140 points a night. Analytics.
What do you...
Analytics has also changed the game. So I just wanted to throw that out there, where I believe analytics can be used in a positive way, kind of a la D'Antoni, as you brought up, 8 seconds or less, where he kind of put more of the European flow, but yet Greg Popovich did that and had success and won championships with more of a Euro style game where there was more ball movement, as the Golden State Warriors did. And it's still a team game. And if you're unselfish, like a Steph Curry, who's going to make the extra pass or the hockey assist, as we call it, the pass that leads to the pass for the score, right. I think that's sexy, and that's the basketball. Hockey assist,
like it.
Yeah,
so I mean, the cross reference there.
It's what we do, man. It's what we do.
The pass. What are your thoughts on the Pacers playing the 2 big men? Every offseason, it's which one of them is going to get traded, but I'm happy to see they're both there. I mean, do you think that'll work, or do you think that they're going to have to end up splitting them up eventually?
I think they're going to figure it out. I think Nate is doing a great job. I think he's doing a great job, and they're going to galvanize, and they're going to work it out, and they're going to figure out what's going to be the most productive, or is it going to be a guy who's going to come off the bench and be a 6-man to bring energy off the bench? I like what they're doing. They're going to be okay. I mean, think about it. You just added another piece. You lost Victor Oladipo. So again, they're trying to fill each other out, and it takes a little bit of time to get that chemistry and to get people comfortable and build that confidence, but yet they're going to do it and stay within a system that Nate's going to have. That culture is going to be just fine with the Pacers. Fans just have to be a little bit patient to let it come together, and don't be too quick to judge or rule them out. It's going to happen. It's going to work.
Matt, you're on fire, bud.
Woo! Flaming.
Absolutely.
Like I say,
flaming.
NBA jams, you've hit 3 in a row.
I was going to say, we got LeVert coming too here as soon as he gets he gets healthy again.
And you know what? I pray for a speedy recovery for that young man because he's sneaky good and that kid has a chance. So let's hope that everything goes well, because maybe it was a blessing in disguise that it happened the way that happened, because if he stays where he's at, they may not even go through the medical protocol to find that ailment. And thank goodness they found that ailment. Let's get this young kid healthy, so that way, again, we talk about longevity, and after basketball is done, he's going to be healthy, so that way he can go out there and play with his grandkids and tell stories about, hey, look what I did with the Pacers once I got healthy.
Was it me? Was it me that, or was it just me that makes me? Did I see a headline that he said the trade saved his life?
Yes. Yeah, he did.
I haven't seen it because I'm out here in Salt Lake, but I believe it to be true, or I wouldn't have said it just now.
Yeah.
And I think it says a lot about the Pacers as wanting him, that they kept the trade. I mean, obviously they got an extra second round pick, I think, just because of the failed physical. But I think it says a lot that they still wanted him and didn't blow up the trade. And
kudos to the organization, to the franchise.
That could have peed in somebody's Wheaties on that one. Jeez.
Hey, you better believe it.
Hey, I wanted to ask Scott, we talked about the different coaches that you've worked with. How did assistant coaches hold each other accountable? And did the head coach, how did the head coach hold his assistant coaches accountable?
I like that. The head coach is going to be the barking dog. There's always going to be guys that are going to be the teachers, whether they're working with the guards or maybe they're working with the big man. An example, when I'm here with Coach Jerry Sloane, a Hall of Fame guy who never won Coach of the Year, and I never understood that. And it's almost like
it baffles me.
Yeah, it's almost like he was so good for so long, and he consistently was so good that the press, because they're in a small market, media-wise, just didn't get the recognition that he deserved. But
that's the key. He was winning in Utah, which is such a small market.
Yep.
He was winning in Utah.
That's exactly
that's a good coach.
Yeah, it's a great
coach. I think the bad part is for those, unless you go from like a losing coach to first seed, you set that bar so high, they just expect you to leap over it to win that
It's just
award.
like LeBron. It's like, why isn't LeBron winning an MVP every year? Well, again, he set the bar so high that it's almost like you get LeBron fatigue as a media member, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, who can we give it to that is going to continue to generate interest? So it's the same discussion.
Karl Malone getting it in '98 over Jordan.
Right. Same thing. But again, look what Karl Malone did. My goodness.
No, absolutely. He had an awesome, amazing season. But Michael Jordan could be the MVP every year that he played.
Right. Well, I want to go back to answer the question. I'm sorry to get sidetracked. No, because there's so much great discussion going on, and I love talking basketball. But what Coach Sloane did out here, he was phenomenal, because he would sit there and whatever he said went. That's the head coach. And I loved how he delegated responsibilities. At that time, Ty Corbin worked with the big man, which was Mehmet Okur and Carlos Boozer. And then yet you had Scott Layden, who was Frank Layden's son, worked with the guards and, working with them. And of course, that's when we had Kyle Korver, Ronnie Brewer, Paul Millsap was in that group. And it was just a lot of fun to see. But yet you had Jeff Hornacek, who came in and was the shooting coach, who was working with Kyle Korver to get his proficiency up, and was also working with AK-47 Andre Karolinko at the time. So they all had responsibilities, but yet the coach also would give each of those people on the staff like 8 teams to scout. So when they played one of those teams, it was that coach's responsibility to have the scouting report plan and walk through the teaching for the pre-games. And it was great to see them, because coaches weren't just wallflowers and they weren't just sitting there being yes man. Coach Sloane allowed those coaches to coach and teach and hold players responsible and accountable, but yet the way that it all went together, Phil Johnson was a phenomenal teacher. And you talk about loyalty. Phil Johnson was with Jerry Sloane for 23 seasons and never left the man's side. And when Jerry Sloane stepped down, Phil Johnson stepped down with him, and then Ty Corbin scooted up 2 chairs to take that head coaching job. So I'm just speaking from what I saw, but for me to sit there and be able to consult with Coach Sloane to see those responsibilities, I hope that answers your questions. But that's how a solid franchise and a coach who has trust and respect in his coaches gave them responsibilities, and yet they all did their job. They held each other accountable. They held the players accountable. And then what do you have? year after year of being in the playoffs. That's how you get it done. And the inmates didn't run the asylum.
Right.
Bottom line.
With the accountability would be, look, I'm giving you this autonomy as a coach. If we're not successful, while I'm ultimately in charge, you are going to be held accountable to that success as well.
And that's a great.
It's that trust, just like the coach to the player with the trust. Yep. The coach is instilling confidence and trust into the coach, because now you're giving that coach a voice, and so everybody had a voice. And let me tell you something, fellas, when you can collectively and collaboratively have that mutual respect, and you have a culture of hard work and a culture of accountability and a culture of family, only good things are going to happen.
You just triggered me. I have one question more that I think I have to get to.
Oh, come on. We're gonna keep triggering.
Well, no.
Questions.
Yes, but I have a lightning one where if lightning struck right now and took out the lights, we're gonna have this question at least. Okay.
Do it. Hit me.
So I listened to your show with Spencer Hayward.
Phenomenal.
Amazing. And I watched it on Facebook. So I got the whole entire hour 47. Instead, I know you're gonna say that, or you said that you're gonna cut it into two pieces. So it's not an hour 47, but I listened to it. I couldn't stop.
Oh, he was phenomenal. What a story. What a journey.
And you brought up the Europeans or the international players, that they do other sorts of training for the game, for their game. So they're not out there playing basketball necessarily. They're doing something to get, their dexterity better and their balance and things. You talked to him, and he talked about something about walking down the aisles of the cotton rows because he was a cotton picker growing up in high school. And if he went in too hard to get that cotton, there's a thorn in the middle. And he had to learn. He had to learn how to pick it.
Yep.
With both hands. Yep. So he was ambidextrous in that aspect. He could go right or left. But he was training for basketball, and he had a sack full of cotton on his back. So
that's right. That was heavy weights. That was heavy with dew. You got it over the shoulder. You're bending over. Wow. So he had all that strength, and he was building up all that endurance. But yet he had the dexterity in his hands because he knew how to pick that cotton without getting bloody. Mm-hmm. It's just a phenomenal story.
Yeah, it's amazing. My question to that, Scott, is he's in Mississippi doing this, so he's an American ball player. With that description, is he kind of the European style American ball player where he did training to become superior at basketball? He had the height. He could do nothing about that. That came, but he did the little things, not necessarily playing the game, to get better at the game. So is he a European style American ball player?
Well, it came from hard work.
Right.
And the hard
that's
work
what the
carried
internationals.
That's right.
He's 100%. Kind of that DNA, so to speak.
Yep, you bet.
Or a European style because of the work ethic outside of basketball.
European players are hungry for knowledge. They love when American coaches come over, and they will run through a brick wall for you. They have that work ethic. They're very hard-nosed, where Americans have been told how good they are for so long that there's a sense of entitlement.
And with Spencer Haywood, he was so hungry to be coached because he didn't want to have to be in the cotton fields.
That's right.
So that's
his mom was making $2 a day picking cotton, and all he wanted to do was try to provide for his family. So he came in hungry with a chip on his shoulder, wanting to do something than just pick cotton. But if you remember, he also said, while I was out there picking cotton, he goes, I wanted to be the best cotton picker in the state.
Yeah.
And I love that statement, because that kind of right there shows you, if you have the determination and the laser focus to set your mind on a goal and work hard to achieve that goal every day, good things are going to happen, and not let the negativity or the bullying or the naysayers or the haters, distract you. Because, if someone tells you 5 or 6 times in a row you can't do it, you're going to start believing you can't do it. But if you sit there and have the determination and you callous yourself to white noise and you stay focused, you can attain anything you want to attain.
Yeah, that's amazing. you talked about Steph Curry and Kobe Bryant and that 10,000 hours of one skill to be, to own it, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that can be taught at a young age, or is that something that's already ingrained in that athlete? Like, so if you have young children, can you teach them to try to do that and be best, or do they have to already have that kind of clicking in their mind? What's your thought?
Another great question, man. You guys are on it. Here's my honest opinion on this. I feel like coaches are making the mistake right now to make players choose and specialize in one sport. They're going to get burnt out. They're going to get tired. Where I grew up, I played 4 sports in high school. And it was like, while I'm playing those sports, each one of those sports prepared me for something else or the next sport, and it kept me in shape. So I didn't have to work hard to get in shape. I was already in shape, but yet the physicality of being a quarterback in football helped me to be pounded inside, when I was going inside and getting knocked around by someone 6'8", 6'9", prepared me. Staying in shape for track, I had to push myself because that's an individual sport, and yet I still set records in the 100, the 200, and competed in the long jump at the state. So for me, I think the mistake that a lot of parents and coaches are making are making kids specialize. Let them do many sports. Let them play multiple sports, and then they can choose and decide where they're passionate. And once you find out and they make a choice where they're passionate, they're going to work harder at it because they like it and they're having fun doing it. That's the first mistake that people make. Don't make them specialize. Let them play all the sports and let them get something positive and learn life lessons from all of those sports. And then when they choose to which one they want to be good at, or they become passionate and purposeful in a certain sport, then automatically they're going to already spend the hours in it because they're enjoying it, and then make sure that they're getting the proper instruction and guidance and mentorship to make sure they're teaching it and doing it the right way. That's where those 10,000 hours are going to come from. Because if not, if you sit there and make someone do something that they don't want to do and you make it a job to them, mentally, they're going to lose it. And at the highest level, fellas, think about it. So many guys are so gifted and skilled, but mentally and the mindset is where they're going to get that 10% advantage. So it's 90% physical, 10% mental. Well, if they can be strong mentally and have a mindset to, work on being the greatest, a la Mamba mentality, that's where that's going to come from. So I hope I answered your question, but yet,
absolutely,
man. Again, when I'm teaching shooting and basketball, it takes 3 months to correct one habit, but it takes 3 months to correct the habit of doing perfect repetitions at 1,500 a day, 1,500 times a day. 3 months to change a habit, 6 months to perfect a habit. And what are we talking about? Now we're talking about muscle memory, visualization. The player needs to see the ball going through the hoop. How are they going to see the ball going through the hoop more? By getting the proper mechanics. Now we're talking about muscle memory, the same thing as a golfer. Look at a golfer and a swing. They know what they got to correct in a swing in golf. So again, I'm Crawfording, but again, it's all the same, but can they make it applicable? And players today are so visual. Why are players today so visual? Because they're growing up on their phones, they're growing up with their PlayStations and their Xboxes. Everything is visual to them. So if that's the case, as a coach, know that these players are going to be visual. Use the technology that you have, videotape them and show them what they got to correct, and then now slow them down and teach them correctly.
For sure. Phenomenal. And you know what? It's recording. Your internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, it's just so the people who are visually watching, it's just frozen. But for the podcast listeners, it's still just us just chopping it up.
How about now? Am I moving?
Nope,
it's a different picture, but you're still froze. Yeah. It's you look much happier in this one.
Hey, let me give you a virtual hug, man. It's all good.
Yes. See, we can see you guys. We're moving just fine for us.
Yeah, we really are.
But now it's saying it's not responding. So I know it's still recording.
I can see Matt over there with his Pacers t-shirt on and his nice little cap, looking sexy over there. But you guys are a little frozen in time, but it's all good.
Anyways, I don't know if we have got it.
It's like Biggie Smalls. It's all good, baby.
Give me like a minute. You guys can chat. Oh, did we come back on?
Go ahead, Matt. Hit me.
I'll be back in a minute.
No problem.
All right. Sorry, I got thrown off there. Go ahead, Richie. Go ahead.
All right. What's the craziest thing that you saw that you know, when you were with your team coaching it? What's the craziest thing you saw nightlife wise, or you talked about already the oozes and stuff, like something that, because this is all brand new to me. This is so interesting. All the things you've done and the places you've been, it's so cool to me. What's one of the things that, you know, normal people like me have not experienced relating like this?
Well, I could share an interesting story with you that when I coached in Saudi Arabia, people didn't even know they had professional basketball in Saudi Arabia. I was actually living, usually most expatriates or individuals coming into the country, they would live in compounds. I was put in a normal home or a townhome, and they actually had me living right across from the Bin Laden family compound.
Whoa!
So that was an interesting thing. And then here's another interesting thing. I coached the club called Al Ittihad, and we had success for the first time in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we beat Egypt and we beat Tunisia. You know, we beat some teams in the Arab Championships, and Omar Khashoggi was a main financial contributor to that team. And Omar Khashoggi was the gentleman who manufactured military warheads. And then because of that connection, when I was trying to leave the country, they would look at my passport, see, you know, where I was at, saw the work visa, and I always was being detained, whether it was through Istanbul or whatever. And they're like, okay, what was your dealings with Omar Khashoggi? And I'd have to be like, hey, I was just coaching the team. But that was so neat because we had success that I actually got to meet the king, Abdul Aziz, and then I also met his son, Prince Fawad, who was the head of the sports ministry through the kingdom. And we got to be knighted and, you know, the gold medals. And I mean, that was just an interesting time. I need to write a book and share some of these things because just like I said in Lebanon, you know, to be coaching in Lebanon where the team that I coached was actually Muslim based. The team that was the 7-time reigning champion was Christian based. And then, so not only was it religious differences, but the president of the country supported the opposing team. The prime minister of the country supported our team. So then you had a mix of religion, politics, and then sport. And they loved the sport of basketball. The gym that we coached in was like Duke University with Cameron Crazies, where 3,000 people would be sitting outside for us to go into the gym, and then there would be, you know, 5,000 people inside, and they're all, you know, they're chanting and dancing, and I mean, it's just a wonderful atmosphere to be coaching. And even though, you know, if you watch CNN or MSNBC, all you hear was the, you know, the civil war and strife of Beirut, Lebanon, and the war with, you know, countries like Syria, but yet it was truly the pearl of the Mediterranean, and our club sat right on the Mediterranean Sea. And it was one of my favorite places to coach because, to me, growing up in Indiana, for them to be so passionate about basketball was a respite and more of a getaway for them for their everyday life. And so to be in a position to provide that sports entertainment for them, it was something magical.
Loyal Loungers, thank you for listening. We love you and we appreciate you. We do this for you. If you could do us a favor, leave us a review on whatever platform you grab a listen. This will let us know what you love and what might need to be retired. And always remember to sit back, relax, and grow to listen.